Hello and welcome back to Cinescapist TV. If you're new here, hello, my name is Kat. Nice to see ya. If you're not new here, hey friends, welcome back. I have avoided filming this video until today, which is the day before you're watching it, because I really didn't want to have to rewatch these films. Let's talk about my least favorite Marvel movies, which are the first three. I know, again, controversial opinion. It's definitely on the unpopular side, and I know, but hear me out. Here's why these three films are probably my least favorite in the entire franchise. And it makes me kind of sad because it's the way that most people came into the MCU was from these films, because that's how it all began. And most people have no issue with them or little issue with them. But I can't stand these movies. Like, to give you an idea, I watched about half of The Incredible Hulk and half of the first Iron Man movie, and I gave up. I was like, all right, I remember what happens. I can talk about them now. I really don't want to watch them again. So, before you come at me, let me explain myself. So what people usually say about Thor, that's how I feel about all three of these films, and I'm going to group them all together because really they're kind of one movie. Like, tonally they're very much the same, thematically they're pretty much the same. There's not a lot going on to differentiate them, especially Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. You could squish them into one film and they're kind of sort of the same movie, so yeah. So what people usually say about Thor, which is that it's boring, that's how I feel about these films. I think they're boring AF. Like, they kind of read like late 90s, early 2000s action movies. And while that's usually okay for some, they're kind of mediocre 90s/2000s action movies. Like, I'd really much rather watch an actual action movie, any of the Mission Impossible films, than any of these three. Because think about it, you've got your really stereotypical antagonists, usually with some kind of political undertone, like you've got your evil Russian in Iron Man 2, your government baddie in The Incredible Hulk, and some really dumb terrorists in Iron Man 1. We're gonna go back to that. You also have multiple shooting locations of varying degrees of exoticness. Your Afghanistan desert, your Brazilian city, your super rich French city. I mean, not exactly French, but you know what I mean. Your whole cast of like foreign locations that are cool and lend themselves to that kind of cinematic action. But ultimately, I don't know that I engage with any of these films on a remotely deep level. They're all just kind of samey. Like, talk about your conventional directors. Looking at you, Jon Favreau. Alright, so let's take them one by one for a minute. The first MCU movie was Iron Man 1, which kind of cements Tony Stark as one of the key protagonists of the whole franchise. Now, Tony, again, interestingly, kind of like Thor, starts off as a douche. Except he is not a likable douche. He is very much a warmongering, constantly drunk jackass. Doesn't care about the people in his life, even the people who are his friends, and is perfectly fine with the stuff that he builds killing loads and loads of people. And then all it takes is him getting abducted, thrown into a cave for an indeterminate amount of time, and like breaking out of that cave to kind of go, wait, I shouldn't do that. Kill lots of people, not escape from caves. And then the rest of the film is about him going against Obadiah Stane, who was friends with his dad and co-runs the company and wants to keep on making weapons. While Tony has suddenly grown a backbone and doesn't want to do that anymore. All in all, it's an okay emotional journey. My problem is that it's just mired in mediocre action sequences that just kind of don't do anything for me whatsoever. Now, the thing that bothers me the most about the first Iron Man movie are the antagonists in that first third. Now, they are named as the Ten Rings, who actually come back to haunt us at a later stage in the MCU in Iron Man 3. But it kind of doesn't matter at this point. They're kind of nondescript, Arab-presenting terrorists. Mind you, this was filmed in 2007, 2008, so right at like peak post 9/11 American narratives of like the evil Arab terrorist, which is very much, a evolution of like the evil Russian agent, and which has in recent years turned into like the evil North Korean soldier. All American movies have some sort of like propaganda in them somewhere. And this is also why I kind of don't like these films, because they perpetuate that kind of story, which was very much a thing in the 80s and 90s. And it kind of got boring, to be honest. There were so many movies made in the 90s with that kind of story that I just kind of don't care at this point. So anyway, to go back to the terrorists in this movie, they are stupid. And I don't just mean, haha, like they blunder. They are stupid. They are outright just dumb as fuck. Like, they capture Tony Stark, and then they're like, build us a rocket, and then he doesn't do that, and they're like, I'm sure he's upgrading it? He's building a helmet, what the hell does it look like? And like the doctor who saves his life is like, oh, they speak so many languages, except only one of them speaks English, but they all like speak Hungarian, Urdu, Russian, I don't know what else. And so it really begs the question, how do these guys communicate with each other? Like, sure, they're this international secret organization of like terrorists who want to take over the world or something. It's really nondescript. Like, by removing them from like the evil Arab narrative, it's just really not clear who these people are and what they want. Except for, of course, comic book readers will know who these people are because they feature in the comics quite heavily. Only I'm not really a comic book reader, and I would really appreciate that the films make sense on their own. So, there's that. So in any case, as much as the rest of Tony's journey does make sense and is quite moving, I just have a very hard time getting immersed in the world of this film after having had to go through all of that nonsense with the 10 rings and the cave. Literally, I sat through that whole thing again and I was like, oh yeah, now I remember why I hate this movie. And maybe it's a bit dismissive of me, and maybe I should give it another go if I can avoid that entire first half hour. I don't know, it's really not my favorite. So then we come to The Incredible Hulk. Now, what is interesting about The Incredible Hulk is that it kind of sort of assumes you've seen Ang Lee's Hulk movie. The one with Eric Bana as Bruce Banner, which was actually pretty good but really weird and is not a part of the MCU. And yet, what I find really interesting is that the opening sequence, the opening montage, if you will, of The Incredible Hulk kind of works as a montage of, like, reshot scenes that you would have seen in the Hulk movie. So they're like, we're not going to shoot the origin story again. You guys have seen that. So we're just going to do a refresher while shooting the same scenes with different actors. Because, by the way, we've recast everybody. So yeah, like, they bring you back up to speed in no time flat and just keep the ball rolling, which is actually commendable. But at the same time, the rest of the film isn't really that interesting. You can literally summarize The Incredible Hulk by saying, dude turns green, hates himself, people want his power, so he's on the run constantly. Like, there's this line that he keeps mentioning in later MCU movies as Mark Ruffalo that's like, when do I ever get what I want? And all of that starts here. It's a really, really sad story. And there's not a lot in this film that picks up from that sad starting point. Like, it goes from sad to mad to sad again. And at no point is there anything to lift us up, to give us some hope. It's just misery, but green. And tonally, it shares a lot with Iron Man. There's a lot of exotic locations. There's an antagonist who comes from the hero's sort of background, who wants to keep them from achieving what they want to do, which in Bruce's case is just to be left alone. He just wants to be left alone. And yeah, I don't really enjoy this film because it's just sad the whole way through. And also, I kind of don't buy Edward Norton's casting. Like, he just doesn't look like Bruce. Eric Bana looked like Bruce. Mark Ruffalo looks like Bruce. Edward Norton just doesn't really look like Bruce. Like, even my non-comic book reader mind at the time, I was like, that's not really what Bruce Banner is supposed to look like. I don't know. And like his performance in it is very disappointing for Edward Norton because he's a fantastic actor. It's just kind of like, here's this dude who's not even really taking this movie seriously, but like we're meant to take it seriously. So overall, yeah, it's a disappointing film. I don't really enjoy it. I tried to watch it again. I couldn't get through the whole thing. So yeah, sorry. And then let's talk about Iron Man 2. Also known as I want my board. Give me my board. Where is my board? Another prime example of a great actor, Mickey Rourke, just being silly. And like the fact that like the villains of this film, you've got your evil Russian, and then you have Sam Rockwell just kind of being comic relief but villainous. And I don't know, there's only so much wisecracking jokes that I can take before the whole thing just kind of starts looking like a joke. You know, I'm not saying give me a Shakespearean serious movie, but I'm saying give me a Shakespearean serious movie. Like, can you tell I'm not really into this kind of film? Like, honestly, if I'd come into the MCU from the beginning, I think that at this point, I would have stopped watching. Because so far you have 3 films that are very similar in tone. Iron Man 2 is pretty much still an action movie. You've got your exotic foreign locations, you've got your bombastic action sequences, and also like a lot of yelling. Gwyneth Paltrow's character goes from sweet romantic lead to just angry wife who just yells at the husband, even though I know they're not married, but that's pretty much the relationship here. And it's incredibly annoying because honestly, half the film I just can't tell what they're saying because they're just yelling at each other. So overall, really, it's quite a stressful experience watching Iron Man 2. And while I have watched it a couple of times, I have no inclination to watch it again. I do have to admit, as far as emotional impact, like the connection that we build with Tony through these 2 films, there is some of that. You know, like we watch him become a decent human being and defeat the people who stand in the way of it. He literally starts off as an anti-hero, and by the end of the second film, he's fully cemented as a hero. Which is super important because in the first Avengers film, he is pretty much the linchpin holding everybody together. So, you know, they're not necessarily bad movies. They're just really not what I engage with personally. But hey, I suppose that's the great thing with the MCU because especially at this point, there's so many different kinds of movies within the same franchise that even if you don't like this kind of like more action-based film, there's other films that you'll probably like more. Like what these 3 films in particular set out to do, they set out to introduce us to the concept of different heroes with different kinds of powers existing in the same universe and kind of hinting at the possibility that there could be a team up. And of course I have reviewed the first Thor film already, so if you want you can tap right there and watch the video where the cinematic universe proper is born because the story starts to extend outside of Earth. So there you have the introduction of the idea that there's a whole other universe of people and heroes and villains and bad guys to fight and danger. Ratings wise, if you're into that sort of thing, I would give Iron Man 1 a solid 3, but take a star away for those stupid terrorists, so 2. The Incredible Hulk also gets a 2, and then Iron Man 2 gets a 1 because it's terrible and I hate it. So yeah, there you have it. That's out of the way now. I've done it. Those are my 3 least favorite Marvel movies. I suppose it's not been a super positive video, so if you don't want to give a thumbs up, I completely understand. But honestly, sound off in the comments. Let me know if you do like these movies, what about them is it that speaks to you? Because I'm really fascinated. I have a couple of friends who are really big Tony fans, and for them, the emotional journey does translate a lot better, whereas for me, it was just kind of bogged down in like dumb antagonist stuff. And also I've literally never met a person who's super enjoyed The Incredible Hulk, so if you're out there, talk to me, let me know, what do you like about The Incredible Hulk? Because it's just really sad. Do subscribe to the channel for more Marvel goodness and turn on post notifications as well. My schedule is a little bit irregular right now, but I am still within a reasonable time frame to cover everything before Avengers Endgame is out, so yay. You can also follow me on Instagram for some behind the scenes stuff, and yeah, I'll see you guys at the next one. Bye!